began not with a meltdown, a scandal, or a viral outburst, but with silence. For someone as relentlessly visible as Kanye West, silence is not just unusual, it's seismic. On May 21st, that silence was broken not by a tweet or a paparazzi photo, but by a quiet confirmation. Kanye West and his wife, Bianca Censori, had entered a rehabilitation clinic in Spain. The couple, known for their enigmatic appearances and tightly controlled public image, had managed to keep the move under wraps until it was already in motion. Just days earlier, they had been spotted shopping in Mallorca, exchanging smiles, holding hands, and exuding the effortless glamour that has long fascinated fans and fueled media obsession. There was no visible trace of crisis, no chaotic energy, no tabloid fodder, only calm. And yet, beneath that calm, something had clearly unraveled. The revelation came like a ripple across the entertainment world. Had Kanye finally reached his limit? And if so, what was happening behind the scenes of this famously layered life? For years, Kanye West has been one of the most unpredictable and polarizing figures in pop culture. A musical genius to some, a provocateur to others, and to many, a man grappling publicly with demons too heavy to carry in private. From his mental health struggles to controversial rants and erratic behavior, Kanye's name has been synonymous with volatility. But this quiet step into a treatment facility was different. It wasn't performed on a stage, live-streamed, or transformed into spectacle. It was human. And that's precisely what made it shocking. With Bianca at his side, the move signaled something deeper than a publicity retreat. It felt like a surrender, not to weakness, but to honesty. The choice of Spain as the rehab location added another layer of mystique. Was it a bid for privacy, or a search for peace far away from American media intensity? For someone like Kanye, whose entire career has been built on loud declarations and public reinvention, this retreat into quietude feels like an entirely new act. As speculation swirls and fans comb through recent photos and posts for clues, one thing is clear. The narrative is changing. The man who once declared himself a god is now facing something all too human. And while details remain scarce, no official statement, no diagnosis, no paparazzi exposé, the public is left with a rare glimpse of vulnerability. In a celebrity culture that thrives on breakdowns and comebacks, Kanye West has chosen neither. He's chosen a pause. And in that pause, the world waits. Not for music or headlines, but for a man to heal. But the road to that quiet decision was anything but peaceful. For Kanye West, the past year had been a relentless spiral of scrutiny, suspicion, and spiraling speculation. His behavior had grown increasingly erratic, with sudden disappearances from public events, cryptic social media posts that vanished within hours, and rumored fallouts with both collaborators and close friends. Those closest to the rapper, industry insiders, former allies, even fans, watched with mounting concern as his once towering public presence began to crumble into something darker and more fragile. The persona that had once been larger than life, unapologetically brash and chaotic, was now marked by absences, isolation, and what some sources described as emotional implosions behind closed doors. Bianca, meanwhile, found herself thrust into a role she may not have anticipated when she married the controversial mogul, caretaker, buffer, and emotional anchor. Her public image, always measured and somewhat enigmatic, began to reveal cracks of its own as she appeared increasingly tense in photos, avoiding eye contact, clutching Kanye's hand tightly in moments that didn't quite match their surroundings. The couple's recent trip to Spain, now understood as the lead-up to their check-in, had all the markings of a last attempt at normalcy. Yet behind the lavish storefronts and seaside views was a different reality. Kanye, once known for commanding every room he entered, had reportedly become withdrawn, agitated, and emotionally volatile. According to unverified reports, there were moments in the days leading up to rehab where he refused to leave his hotel room for hours, skipping scheduled meetings and lashing out at staff. His team, which had already been shrinking after a series of controversial statements the previous year, was now reduced to a skeleton crew of loyalists. People willing to endure the storm without asking too many questions. Bianca, for all her loyalty, was said to have insisted on intervention, not out of fear, but love. A source close to the couple claims she drew a line after a sleepless night where Kanye had spoken in circles for hours, spiraling into incoherent self-blame and fear. It wasn't just exhaustion, it was a mental health emergency. And yet, despite all this, the public saw none of it. To the world, Kanye and Bianca were just another eccentric power couple wandering Europe in designer sunglasses. But the truth was far more fragile. Kanye's past diagnoses, bipolar disorder being the most widely reported, had long been weaponized by tabloids and critics. This time, though, the concern felt different. Less scandal, more sorrow. The spectacle of Kanye had finally collapsed inward, leaving a man with too much history and too little help. For Bianca, the decision to support him through rehab wasn't about salvaging image. It was about saving the man behind the myth. And for Kanye, it may have been the first moment in years where he allowed someone else to take the lead. Then, in an almost cinematic reversal of roles, Kanye West, the man who had once demanded the world's attention with every impulsive tweet, unpredictable award show moment, and godlike proclamation, chose to disappear. With Bianca Censori by his side, he entered the Spanish rehabilitation facility under complete media blackout. No entourage, no cameras, no fanfare, just silence. For the first time in perhaps a decade, there was no public statement to frame the moment, no fashion-forward distraction to mask the reality. And that reality was raw. Insiders say that the first 48 hours inside the clinic were among the most difficult of Kanye's life. Withdrawal, not just from substances, if any were involved, but from noise, from stimulation, from the relentless adrenaline that fame and controversy had fed him for years. The clinic, located in a secluded, mountain-fringed village, was a far cry from his Calabasas compound or the Paris runways he once strutted. Here, the mirrors were few, the routines rigid, the attention inward. Kanye, reportedly used to dictating every element of his environment, now had to follow schedules, participate in group therapy, and undergo evaluations led by people who neither feared nor revered his name. According to an anonymous source within the clinic, the first session ended in silence. Kanye didn't speak. Not because he was uncooperative, but because he didn't know how to begin. Bianca, meanwhile, was given the option to leave, to allow the process to unfold without the emotional entanglement of partnership. She refused. Instead, she checked into a separate wing designed for spouses of patients undergoing long-term psychological recovery. There, she participated in counseling, wellness practices, and partner-specific support sessions. What emerged from those sessions, reportedly, was a portrait of a woman deeply committed, but increasingly exhausted. She spoke, sources say, about loving a man who sometimes vanished into himself. A man whose mind moved faster than his emotions could catch. A man who could be brilliant, kind, generous, and in the next hour, cold, paranoid, unreachable. Her love, while unwavering, had begun to wear down under the weight of trying to anchor someone adrift. But it was here, in this crucible of separation and support, that something began to shift. For the first time, Kanye began showing signs of submission, not to the institution, but to the process. He participated, he listened, he spoke. Slowly at first, like a man learning a new language. Stories about his father, his fears, his obsession with legacy. Bianca joined him for selected sessions. They held hands. They cried. The myth unraveled, and what remained was just a man and a woman, broken, but not beyond repair. The world remained outside, waiting. But for Kanye and Bianca, time inside had taken on a different rhythm. This wasn't spectacle. It was survival. And in the sterile, sunlit halls of a Spanish retreat, the noise finally stopped. Ultimately, the silence that Kanye West once feared had become the very thing giving him clarity. As the weeks passed within the walls of the rehabilitation center, a fragile but genuine version of healing began to emerge. One not curated for headlines, but shaped by confrontation, honesty, and accountability. Staff noted subtle changes in his behavior. The man who once interrupted therapists with tangents about God and fashion now paused, reflected, and asked questions. There were no sudden transformations, no cinematic breakthroughs, but there was consistency. And in Kanye's case, that alone was monumental. For Bianca, the time apart from her husband, even within the same facility, allowed her to rediscover boundaries she hadn't known she'd lost. She began journaling, meditating, and opening up about the emotional burden she'd carried through months of public scrutiny and private storms. In one session, a counselor described their marriage as a shared trauma wrapped in fame, a line that reportedly hit Bianca hard. But rather than run from it, she chose to stay and rebuild piece by piece, beside the man she loved. By the third week, Kanye and Bianca were allowed supervised time outside the facility, brief walks through nearby vineyards, phone-free mornings with herbal tea and unspoken emotions. The staff described them as quiet but connected. Not the glamorous couple that had once dominated tabloids, but two people trying to stitch their humanity back together without cameras watching. Kanye reportedly began sketching again, Not fashion or album covers, but abstract shapes, childlike and unpolished. It was as if he was starting over, rediscovering himself without the brand attached. And maybe that was the point. For years, Kanye West had lived as an idea, controversial, brilliant, unbearable, revolutionary. But inside those walls, stripped of spectacle, he was just a man in pain, longing for peace. When the couple finally left the facility under discreet arrangements, there were no photo ops, no grand statements, just the soft closing of a door and the whisper of a new chapter. The media, of course, speculated, is Kanye coming back? Will he drop a recovery album? Will Bianca stay? But those questions missed the point. The story wasn't about return. It was about retreat. About learning that stepping back doesn't mean giving up. That silence can be strength. That healing isn't linear, glamorous, or even visible. It's just real. For now, Kanye West and Bianca Censori remain largely off the radar. No interviews, no leaks, just quiet. And in a culture addicted to spectacle, their greatest act of rebellion may be choosing peace over performance. Because sometimes the loudest thing you can do is simply disappear.